All right. Hello and welcome to our virtual stage crew series that we've been doing here. Today we have Sasha Aranow joining us. Sasha currently works at ETC and used to work at the PAC for a while and went to UW-Madison with me. So I've known Sasha for a long time. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's just start by talking about like how you got into theater.
I feel like that was like the squishiest question for me when I was looking at the list of things we might talk about, because I don't actually remember how I ended up at my first stage crew. I just remember being there. And it was in 7th grade. And I know that my parents had talked to me about needing to do extracurriculars, and we had just moved to a new town. I didn't know anyone. So how I ended up at the stage crew meeting, I was 13. I don't remember. I'm old now. But I was immediately hooked. I do remember just thinking it was so fun and finally feeling like I was making friends. And so I kept doing it. And I did it all through high school. And I realized when I was going to college, I had a couple people telling me I really needed to go for a real career field. So my freshman year of college, I was a chemistry major and I was miserable and I missed theater and I was doing volunteer theater on the side. And I just realized that I just wanted to be in the theater all the time. And it was silly to go to school for something I wasn't enjoying when I could go to school for something I really loved. And so I ended up getting a theater major.
Nice.
And I'm insane.
So what type of theater were you working in the 7th grade stage crew? Like,
Oh man, we had like a cafe gymnatorium in my middle school. So it was a very, very small proscenium stage. We did not have a curtain. We did not have wings. It was just kind of pushed back section of the wall.
nice.
It was like a band shell more than it was an actual stage. And we did one production a year, and it was usually like a children's fairy tale sort of thing. And you'd hide everyone in the hallway, and they'd have to run down a hallway and like jump up onto the stage to enter.
Nice.
But it meant that we got to, like, with our parents, make costumes for people and kind of try and figure out how to fit a set and people into that small space. So we learned a lot about like painting paper to make backdrops because it didn't take up any space and we didn't have anywhere to fly anything. So it was definitely little kids getting creative with mom and dad's help. There was no real theater program until I got to high school.
Nice. Cool. And then what type of theater did you guys have in high school?
In my high school, my freshman year, they built a performing arts center very much like Middleton PAC pre all this construction you guys have going on. But before that, we had a big cafe gymnatorium. So we were able to turn the stage in the gym into our scene shop.
Oh, wow.
And we'd build everything there and then have to load it out through janitorial loading doors and wheel it outside to get it into the actual PAC, where we did not have any that space at that time. They've added on since. I think they've realized that was horribly impractical. And after I graduated, the athletic department reclaimed that stage and they made the gym bigger. But so our PAC was a proscenium theater space as well, but we also had a very small black box.
Oh, nice.
The black box served as our theater classroom because we did have some courses we could take that were theater that started when I was in high school. But also we'd do usually like our one act in there. But most of our work was done in the proscenium on that theater. And once or twice we made it theater in the round and put seats on the stage.
Nice.
Which is really cool.
Cool. So were you interested in theater before you started like working on it? Like, did your family like see a lot of shows growing up? Was it something that you like had an interest in, or was it really not until you like got involved that you became enthralled with it?
That's a really good question. I had never had any experience with theater really before, in terms of like formal theater. I don't remember ever like going to shows with my family, but my aunt and uncle are writers and they're very silly people and would write a play for my cousins and I to put on every holiday at the family holiday party. So we had definitely like made costumes and learned scripts, but we acted them out, like in the living room
Mhm.
for 40 of my aunt's closest friends
Right.
every year. And I loved doing that, and so did my cousins. Actually, so there are 6 of us, and 3 of us went to college for theater.
Oh,
So it
wow.
definitely sparked an interest
Yeah.
for all of us. I'm the only one still doing anything theater related professionally, though. But
That's
my
that's pretty
cousin
good
went to the
odds,
new school
actually.
for acting,
Yeah.
um, and did some film work, and then was a theater teacher in Colorado. And my other cousin went to Indiana Bloomington for musical theater concentration, and she is now in politics, which is
Hmm.
actually not that uncommon,
Yeah.
I hear.
Yeah. For sure.
So
Nice.
I guess we're a
Um,
theater family that never went to shows
yeah.
somehow.
Do you remember what that first show was that you worked on with the
Pied
stage?
Piper,
The Pied Piper.
the
Oh,
Pied Piper.
that's cool.
And I only remember because we didn't have a flute, so we were playing a recorder very loudly, and I remember how horrible that sound
Nice.
was.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, so touched a little bit on your education path, but do you want to talk about like a little bit more detailed about your college career and like how that transferred into your career path?
Yeah, sure. So even though my freshman year of undergrad, I was a chemistry major, I was still taking a theater course each semester because I wanted to be involved. And I knew when I started college that I was really interested in scenic painting and lighting. So I like essentially audited the scenic painting labs at UW, which meant that I wasn't actively participating in running a show, but I was backstage in the scene shop painting a lot, even though I wasn't in the theater department officially. Um, and I was really enjoying that, but I missed electrics. I realized that painting was cool, but I wanted to have more involvement in the actual show. I wanted to have interaction with more of the design elements. And I am not the type of person who's good with power tools. I am extraordinarily klutzy. And so actually designing and building sets, I was sure I was going to kill myself. So, like, let's move back to electrics. And so when I signed up to be a theater major and I talked to my advisor, I figured out how to do my focus emphasis on lighting as much as possible because I really just love getting behind a console and programming. And I really also enjoy how much lighting affects the mood of a performance without people seeming to notice it's there. So I took as many courses that would allow me to focus on electrics as I could. I waved goodbye to the scene shop and pretty much only ever went back there when you were doing stuff in the scene shop and I was looking for you. I feel like that's the only reason I ever went back in the scene shop was like, where's Zane? Um, so I spent a lot of time taking lighting design courses, and I got through to the point where I ran out of undergrad lighting focused courses and had to talk to the professor and get myself installed in one of the graduate design courses. I did a lot of hand drafting. Zane might remember we took a couple computer aided drafting classes and I almost failed them. But I persevered. But I remember a lot of time asking Zane for help because the technical direction kind of side of things definitely gets you a lot more involvement in drawing and drafting and spatial relation, and I wasn't getting that part on a computer.
That was like also a very odd time. It was like right when computer drafting became like was offered. Like we started hand drafting everything, and then
Yeah, I think it was
peop-
senior year we started
yeah,
CAD stuff,
like
or
they
junior or
finally
senior
added
year.
the CAD lab and got AutoCAD for everybody, and like I think I only had to do like one computer project, and like everybody like a year after that was like almost exclusively computer drafting. So
Yeah, that sounds right. And almost all of my stuff from college is on paper. And so when I was looking for jobs, people were like, portfolio, and I'd be like, here's stuff I copied at FedEx Kinko's,
yeah.
and put into a book and snail mailed to you,
Hmm.
because it was all on paper. And now I think people just have digital portfolios. I don't have anything like that from my design days, but I also stopped doing lighting design not long after college. So, because I realized that I really loved being a master electrician.
Yeah, I've just been getting back into the AutoCAD realm after quite some time and some Vectorworks stuff, and it's been pretty much starting over, but it's been fun to get back into it.
I would agree. I've used some of my COVID time to take up LibreCAD and see if I can remind myself how to do stuff, just like easy map out my apartment, see if I can remember how to do measurements, sort of things. But because of my career, I still get to do things like Vectorworks and stuff every now and again. It's just usually messing with stuff other people made rather than me doing the drawing.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Cool.
but yeah, so lighting in college, lots of lighting in college.
Nice. So how did that transition into your career? I don't remember if you went straight to ETC or.
I didn't go straight to ETC. Yeah. So I graduated from college in 2007. And you guys probably don't remember, but Zane does. It was a recession. And no one was hiring a lot. So I actually took an unpaid internship in Chicago at the Bailiwick, and crashed on my aunt's couch for a couple of months, because if you're not getting paid, you can't get your own place. I worked there for I think 2 months and realized that wasn't super sustainable. I also had some personal reasons I needed to come back to Wisconsin. So I moved back to Madison and did odd jobs, some of them theater and some of them not. So I ended up working as an electrician for Madison Repertory until they went under, thanks to said recession in 2009, 2010. I also co-designed a couple of shows with the Madison Theater Guild over at the Bartell, and one production with Stage Q. And during all of this time, I was also working at the Middleton Performing Arts Center. I started as a technician in 2005, and once I graduated from college and ended up back in Madison, became one of the house supervisors and continued in that role until 2012. A lot of time at the PAC. And then during that time, I was also doing children's theater programs with the Middleton Recreational Department. And Zane did some of those with us as well before he went to New York.
Yeah, I got
but
involved
mostly
in,
I've been in Madison.
Yeah, I got involved in one, and we've got a couple of folks in here that have done a lot of work with the rec department over there. So it's a great.
I actually feel like one or two names might be familiar, but I don't see the faces, so I don't know. But yeah, we did Alice in Wonderland and Tom Sawyer. I think that was it.
Yeah, I was in on Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah, that's what it was. Looking Glass Land. That's the play we got rights to. Was Looking Glass Land. So we did this. We did a set class where you could. I took my painting skills and taught people how to paint stuff, while Zane and some of our coworkers built everything, and then I did the lighting design. But it was deemed unsafe to have students who were not high school aged actually doing electrics, so I couldn't show anyone how to hang and focus a light because insurance is a thing.
We haven't really talked about that lately. I wonder if that's still a thing.
I think it was a rec department specific thing that they
Oh.
couldn't pay a fee to increase the insurance. So
Interesting.
it was like, you can let them use power tools occasionally, but you cannot let them on the catwalk. This is silly. Everyone would have been fine touching a light and hanging it when they were 10. Don't stick your finger in the socket.
Yeah. These are good.
So yeah, I designed those shows, and I think it was around that time that I realized that I was not a great designer, did not really enjoy the designing, but all the paperwork and the planning and the actual execution makes me feel great. And so that's like, all right, I'm gonna Emmy as much as possible. And so I did that around local Madison theaters, and I couldn't pay the bills. So I was also working other odd jobs through all of that. I did temp office work at an accounting firm where after taxes were done, I literally shredded paper for 4 hours a day. I worked in a new age bookstore. Just like anything I could do to pay the bills. And I worked at University of Wisconsin Division of Information Technology as their receptionist. And then I started at ETC in 2011. So I had a good 4 years of just like any odd theater job plus anything that could help me pay the bills.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're doing now? And like, what have you been doing at ETC these last 9 years?
9.5 years.
Oh, wow, 9.5 years. Nice.
Yeah. So when I started at ETC, I had applied, I guess I should go back. When we were in college, we went and toured ETC's facilities. And when they took us through tech support, I was like, this is so cool. I want to do this. They have all of the equipment in this room and they get to touch everything and they all know how it all works and they're so smart and I want to do that. I applied for the technical support position twice. Once right after I graduated college and didn't get the job, and once in 2010 and didn't get the job. So in 2011, when I heard that they wanted an administrative assistant for that department, I figured I'd get my foot in the door. So I took the job. It was full-time. It really cut into my regular theater work. But I was able to show the people I was doing admin work for that I understood a lot of what they were doing in their careers. They had never had someone taking notes for the meetings before that knew what they were talking about. And so that allowed me to convince them the next time they were hiring someone for technical support to give me the job.
Nice.
So I finally got it. So I've got 8.5 years in technical support specifically. So starting out, I would take random customer phone calls. I'm sure you guys have talked to like 3 of my coworkers at this point. So you kind of get the gist of like, you never know what's going to happen on the other end of the line. It's a call about ETC equipment or not ETC equipment or something someone thinks is equipment that you made and isn't, and you just roll with it and answer their questions. It requires in-depth knowledge of how electricity and DMX and streaming ACN work and interact with each other, because I can't just learn ETC product. I have to know all this stuff because it interacts with everyone else's product. So I know a lot about Chauvet equipment in addition to knowing a lot about ours, because someone's going to call me in front of their EOS, but they're controlling a Chauvet Rogue, and I have to help on both ends. And then I became the EOS product specialist in 2014, I want to say. So now when people have questions that are specifically about EOS software, I'm the go-to person for that. I also participate in development meetings for the EOS software and hardware. So as we're developing new product, I get to be the person in the room that says, hey, from the end user perspective, that might not be great. Or, oh, you know, what would be really cool is if we did this. And sometimes I win, and sometimes I learn a lot about computer programming that I didn't know about. And the manufacturing process that I'd never thought about. And then in 2017 or 2018, I was about to be a senior technical support specialist. So I no longer take phone calls all day long. My coworker Kirk, who came to one of these, and I are the escalation path for the rest of the department. So I take some calls every day, but mostly I assist my coworkers as they take calls when they can't find an answer. And I'm also the administrator of our knowledge management system, so support.etcconnect.com. I'm running the wheels on that in the background and helping get all kinds of content in so that if you guys have questions, hopefully the answer is easy to find online.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm creating documentation, essentially, for our products. And to do that, I get to play with the equipment all the time and figure out how it works or how it's supposed to work and what's broken. It's really fun.
Nice. What's like a recent problem that you've had to fix over there?
A recent problem that I had to fix. What if I didn't fix it? That's kind of a fun one.
Yeah, for sure.
So, one of my coworkers out of our office in LA called me this morning because we just released new EOS software a couple of months ago, version 3.0. And he called me specifically because he thinks that RDM is broken in 3.0. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, RDM stands for Remote Device Management. It's packets that go bidirectionally on your DMX line to help identify a fixture and configure it. So EOS sends out a little ping that says, hey, anybody out there with information, and fixtures that are capable of it send back a ping that say, hey, I'm this type of fixture, these are my settings, this is my DMX address. And he had a fixture connected to a GeoAt 5, and he wasn't able to get the information. So because of COVID, I'm in my home with limited equipment because I can't fit it all. And my electrical bill just couldn't handle it anyway. I'm maxed out on all of our circuit breakers. So I have a color source spot, and I have ETC Nomad, and I have a programming wing, and I was able to get everything working in 3.0. So what he and I are doing over the next week is finding people who have other equipment that we can test this on to see if it's his GeoAt 5 or if we have a bug. And I kind of like that we don't know yet because we're just going to get to try all kinds of stuff until we know what's going on.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's really fun. I was walking through, what setting do you have here? What setting do you have here? Okay, hang on while I climb under my desk and connect to this DMX cable because the only place I have room for my gadget right now is under my desk. And testing it all out. And now we're calling around all of our coworkers who took a GeoAt 5 home. What firmware are all the circuit boards inside of it running? Can you test this? If you don't, can I come to your house with a fixture and socially distance drop it off so that you can test it? It's kind of fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's super interesting.
So we didn't solve the problem yet. We're going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So how has your like lighting design education like transferred into this, and like what is there stuff that you wish you'd learned in college that you've had to learn on the job, or things that have kind of come full circle or not come full circle, like in like working kind of more on the back end programming, like systems side of things versus the kind of like design and execution side of things?
Sure. I think going to all of those design classes gave me a good understanding of angles, mood, ways to manipulate a beam, and a really wonderful understanding of how color interacts with different set pieces and fabrics. And I think that's the key thing they teach you when you're taking design courses, is how to use color and texture to draw attention to certain things in the way that lights in certain colors affect the way a scenery or a costume might appear, right? So you don't want to put an orange light on someone in a yellow dress, your costume designer is going to be like, what the heck? This looks horrible. It no longer looks like this perfect yellow that I spent hours finding that perfect fabric color for, and you've just ruined it. In my job, I get to help people utilize our fixtures and our consoles to achieve those same things. And so I might get a call from someone and they might say, I'm just programming this and the fade from Q1 to Q2 is looking kind of muddy. And I can teach them the tools with our software to avoid that muddy fade. So I can help improve the way their design is executed through my knowledge of our product. But I can also help when people call and say things like, I just can't get a sharp edge on this and it's really bothering me. And I think that if I hadn't had a design background, I would just be like, okay, you run a barrel in or you run a barrel out, and like that's the mechanics of it, and that's what I would need for tech support. That design allows me to go the extra mile and say like, hey, also you might want to try adding this frost, or I know that if you get this degree lens, how far is your throw? I know all the mathematics behind all of that, and I can give additional advice aside from just the technical details of the situation. That being said, in college, when you're learning lighting design, it doesn't really teach you how to program a console. They don't teach you the way DMX signal is carried on a line or how to set up a network. You show up, you with the master electrician, execute your design. And as the designer, you might watch someone program, but you're not necessarily building the cues yourself. Although in some theaters you are, right? It depends on their budget and what they hired you to do, and whether they have a dedicated board operator or if it's you. So I think in college I would have liked to get a lot more understanding of why signal is carried the way it is and how different components of a system interact with one another. And I had to learn a lot of that on the job, both before ETC in the field and at ETC. I got some programming experience in high school. My technical director really liked lighting too, and he helped me program on an Express, which is like a really rudimentary entry-level console from the 90s. But I taught myself EOS because I wanted to do it. I came into the PAC, I took all the dark time I could, and I learned how to run that board. College didn't teach me that. I had to seek out the experience myself. College taught me how to draft it all and how to make a nice focus, but it didn't teach me that you've always got to have 15 extra pieces of tie line on your belt. Experience taught me that. It didn't teach me that you should always have a spare C-wrench in your truck or car because someone's not going to have the proper tools or something's going to break. Experience taught me that. College is very much about this is how things work. Real life theater is about nothing working the way it's supposed to. And finding a solution. And that's the part of it I love, is nothing ever works out perfectly. And the audience never needs to know.
Yeah, that's very true. I have not heard it said quite like that, but very, very true.
Thank you.
Cool. So what advice would you have for folks who are on like kind of a similar career path that are looking at maybe not necessarily ETC, but like working in the industry, kind of more on the kind of industrial side of things, like
Live performance stuff?
Yeah, that, or like within like a more of the company structure, or
so if like not so if you're not necessarily going to get into like tech support, because I don't think that many people get into theater so that they can have an office job. I certainly didn't, even though I love it. Experience is really important. You can never have too much of it, and I think that that means taking opportunities to work. Your work is worth something, and I don't think that you have to take every volunteer opportunity in the world. You got to think of yourself too, but getting actual time backstage or on stage is the best way to learn. Also, it sucks, but it's true. There's a lot to who you know versus what you know. So that means make friends, talk to people, network, network, network. And the best part about networking is that you're almost bound to find a mentor, and that person can teach you all the stuff that school is not going to teach you. And they can help you get that experience, because when you find someone that you can work really well with, it leads to more jobs in addition to more learning. There's so many people in my career that have just taken the time to explain something to me that just like really clicked. And then I understood so much more, or took a minute to introduce me to someone rather than just letting me be that woman backstage climbing around in all black, running cable. So I could be Sasha. And those people later would say, "Oh, I remember working with her. Let's hire her for this job. Oh, she was working really hard. I saw her doing all this stuff. Sure, she can only lift 50 pounds, but let's hire her." So yeah, get out there and get to know people. There are a lot of really weird, awkward, antisocial people in theater, so you don't have to be some crazy extrovert to still make friends. I'm certainly not.
That's very true. Um, what what are some of the like best classes that you took in college that have like really transferred? Like I know you've talked about like your design classes, but is there any one in particular that kind of like stood out, or like one part that really like has stuck with you into your
I
career?
think taking like higher level lighting design courses, I learned a lot of information about how to interpret a play that I didn't expect coming from those classes. Because I also took a lot of like history of theater and feminist theater and production. You're reading so many shows and you're talking about why plays are constructed the way they are. But taking design courses, specifically those higher level ones, when I was able to get past this 19-degree angle to get the light here, when you started talking about breaking down the show and how to use light to influence emotion and create illusion, has helped me in my life in general. I think I'm better at understanding other people's emotions because I think about how I would want something to read in real life, even if it's just on a page. Really handy with text messaging.
Huh.
What is the feeling there? I'm going to ask because I don't know what you mean.
Interesting.
So those classes have really stuck with me, even though I'm not doing design anymore. They changed the way I read novels. It changes the way I interpret shows I go to. And I think about what in that scene I was really drawn over to that area. Was it the lighting that drew my eye over there, or was that actor particularly enigmatic? Like why was I so focused here, and what art was used to draw me there, and how did that make me feel? And I think that's what I really love about going to shows. And I think that my education in theater enriched my experience as an audience member in a lot of ways also.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Do you ever find yourself having a hard time focusing on the entire show because you're too focused on the technical aspects of it?
Yeah. I have actually started like listening to scores for musicals before I go, because otherwise I will sometimes miss the entire plot point of a song because I was like, ooh, what are they doing with that Mac mover over there? What's happening over here? Hamilton was like that for me in a big way. I was like, oh, turntable. How did they focus those lights on that turntable? I'm going to stare at that for 20 minutes and, oh man, I missed the song. Good thing I knew all the words already. Um, but when I go to not musicals, I actually try not to read about the play beforehand so that I can allow myself to be immersed and then go back and read it after and see what I missed and what changed for me. Reading scripts is still really fun after watching them play.
Nice. I've not done a lot of that, and I like the idea of listening to the score ahead of time, because I'll often get distracted by the mechanics of the show, and sometimes like notice that I haven't actually been paying attention to the show, but more of just everything that's going on around the actors.
Around. You
And
walk into a theater and you look up.
mhm,
The sure sign of like lighting and theater people is like where you look when you walk in. I notice my friends go to shows that aren't theater people. I don't have that many friends that aren't theater people, but they like walk in and they move to their seat, and everyone else is like, how many lines on that fly set you think they got loaded right now? Like, what's going to fly in this show? How much is going to fly in? How much is going to move? Where are they putting it?
mhm.
Oh, getting backstage tours of theaters too, just because then you can see so much more that goes in the mechanics. A show like Wicked coming to Overture, I'm always like, how did they put all that crap in the wing? I don't know how they fit it all back there at all. The wings at Overture are not that big.
Yeah, that's cool.
Love
All
that
right.
stuff.
So, how do you see the industry changing? Both like just in general, and like where do you see the lighting industry going, converging, and then like maybe kind of COVID specific, if you see anything hanging on, uh, or
Sure.
adapting.
Like the industry in general, I think is becoming more socially conscious in a really great way that it really wasn't when we started. Um, Personally, as a woman in theater, I always felt really out of place backstage when I first started. Like I had to work extra hard to prove myself. And now I'm looking at the people coming up behind me, and there are a lot more women, and it is a lot less sexist, and it has changed so fast for the better. And I'm seeing a lot more people of color and people of various genders coming and being themselves. And I think it's amazing, and I hope this trend continues. Obviously, with COVID, you guys are doing all these virtual shows, right? And I think that's the way things are going for a lot of theaters. And I'm really glad that it's going to keep theater alive and, live performance alive in whatever way that it can, but it doesn't feel the same for me. I'm trying to get to a point where it does, but it's very difficult for me to feel connected to a screen in the way I feel connected to a stage. And it's really horrible for lighting because you guys aren't focusing lights in your rooms when you do Zoom shows. Um, Forward did a show via Zoom earlier this year, and they gave a backstage tour. And the lighting was really like some ring lights and people putting aluminum foil reflectors in the lamps they had at home to get better spread. And it was like a lot of ingenuity, but it kind of broke my heart because audio still had a role, sets still had a role, costumes still had a role, and there was no lighting for those shows. I'm really hoping we can all get back to normal eventually and get back in theaters and really start using lighting to move the stage again. But for now, perhaps each of us can think a little bit more about the lighting in our homes and how that affects us. And for me and ETC, there's a lot of, okay, what can we do in the architectural market right now while theaters are closed? And how do we keep people safe? So learning about UVC lighting technology for disinfecting. But also I'm learning a lot more about how people light spaces that are adjacent to the theater and aren't the theater itself. Things that before I'd be like, okay, it's the lobby light. Now it's, well, they're building, a large office center and they're going to put our lights in, which wasn't something we were always doing. We expand that way. So I'm learning about lighting design in new spaces. And it's cool, but it's not as cool as theater. What you think? Like lighting, you can light your office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really cool. But like, then how often are you changing your office?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to rehang all
No.
the lights in your office. I have changed the lighting in this room 6 times probably in the last 8 months because I'm just getting antsy to work.
Yeah, there are some really interesting architectural, like both products and like features, and I think some of these spaces you are seeing like be more multi-functional, and so I think like you are seeing more change in like a lobby or in like an industrial space or like um, a museum sort of setting, that as the products become available to allow for more control in those spaces, I think that is a pretty interesting spot to see where like some of that design mentality like spills over um, into those spaces. And especially like with some of the wireless technology and some of that, I think I could definitely see us seeing more of that in the future for sure.
Definitely. The museums thing is a really good point. Like we do a lot of that sort of stuff, and that is closer to theatrical lighting design than an office would ever be. In an office, they're very focused on, can you see your work and is there a path through, and color temperature doesn't really matter. But when you're talking about an art museum or a natural history museum, the light can damage pieces of art if it's not hung correctly. And I had never in lighting design before talked about CRI before I started working at ETC, because color rendering index is really important, especially for art museums, that the light is of the right quality and color temperature, that you see the colors the artist intended in that painting, and that it doesn't damage the paint over time.
Yeah.
Kind of neat.
Cool. All right. Well, that's kind of all of the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on or talk about before I invite folks back for questions?
I would just throw out that like I think in this world of everyone working from home and theaters being all virtual, it's really easy to worry about this industry going forward. But theater will never, ever go away. We're always going to come back with a vengeance. And your education in theater can get you roles in film world as well and architectural world. So like, don't ever let anyone tell you this isn't a career. It absolutely is. My parents were so wrong. Eat that, Dad. You can do it if you want to, and it's well worth the trials and tribulations to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I would second that. It's worked out well for me, and yeah, it's been great. So I love doing it. Thanks so much for joining us today. And if you've got a little bit of time to hang out, we'll see if
Yeah, sure.
folks have some questions to chat with us a little bit more.